Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, members of the committee. So I'm a former Judge Advocate General, was in the United States military, went to Vanderbilt undergrad, Vanderbilt Law School, was trained in what's called the Rule of Law mission, which I was working with the United States to help other countries kind of obey their constitution. And a lot of us, judge advocates, have returned back from combat, and we're kind of trying to help different states or different government agencies kind of obey their constitution as well. So I am not really appearing as a partisan for Republicans or Democrats. I'm a proponent of the United States Constitution, and the issue of abortion is very controversial. There's a lot of passions on both sides about whether abortion should be limited at fetal heartbeat or should be allowed to the time of birth. But the instant bill today does not take up that issue. The question presented in the instant case here with House Bill 5599 is, can the state of Rhode Island appropriate taxpayer dollars, whether it be state taxpayer dollars or federal taxpayer dollars, to facilities that are providing what's called convenience abortions? And so this bill addresses that question. The short answer is that it cannot. And because the First Amendment, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, the Establishment Clause prohibits that. And so I'm just going to kind of dive into what the bill kind of says in a nutshell. And the bill starts it's predicated on the idea or the premise that when someone says that life does not begin at conception, that abortion isn't immoral, that it's not murder, those are a series of unproven faith-based assumptions that are implicitly religious. Those are positions that are inherently linked to the religion of secular humanism. The United States Supreme Court has already found that secular humanism is a religion for the purpose of the First Amendment, Establishment Clause. That was a case called Torcaso versus Watkins. Just about all the federal court of appeals have also found the same thing. And so this bill basically goes on to say, therefore, that the state of Rhode Island is prohibited from giving federal or taxpayer dollars to any facility providing convenience abortions, which is narrowly defined to abortions that don't involve rape, when the mother's life's in danger. But it's just basically a matter of someone wants to get rid of the child. Because those procedures are non-secular in nature. And for the government to appropriate that kind of money, would have the effect of excessively entangling the government with the religion of secular humanism. And so it would convey to members who are here from Abundant Life that live in this state and pay taxpayers that the favored religion of this state is postmodern, individualistic, moral relativism, is what a lot of us refer to it as in federal court, but the Supreme Court referred to it as secular humanism, so we stick with that. Basically, that appropriation fails what's called prongs 1 and 3 of the Lemon test. That's a test that we use in federal court to determine whether or not government action is religious or not. And so the courts have held that if government action fails one of the prongs of Lemon, the state cannot engage in that activity. So I'm prior military. There's a lot of individuals on this panel that are private military, all of whom have taken a different oath at some time to uphold and defend the United States Constitution. Every member, when they became a legislator, doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat, agreed to uphold the United States Constitution. There's a provision of the United States Constitution called Article 6. It says, every state representative, every state senator, the governor, the Attorney General will not create, introduce, or allow for government action to violate the United States Constitution. So this is a bill that causes the state of Rhode Island to be in accordance and in obedience with the United States Constitution. And so I just kind of gave some legal kind of reasoning behind the bill, but here's how to explain the bill in kind of layman's common sense terms. And that is, there are thousands of people in the state of Rhode Island who sincerely believe that abortion is immoral. And they also believe that to enable acts of immorality is itself an act of immorality. Therefore, for the state should be prohibited from appropriating those taxpayer dollars to the facilities providing convenience abortions because it causes those taxpayers to violate their own conscience by the simple act of paying taxes. It's a coercive act. Some people would say it's completely crazy for someone to say that life begins at conception. Abortion is completely permissible and should be allowed. Other people would say, no, life begins at conception and I don't want to have blood on my hands to enable this activity. And we're not really here to prove or disprove any of that, but the question presented is, should the state of Rhode Island, or should any state, or should the federal government be giving money to facilities providing convenience abortions? And the answer falls, the evidence would show that the evidence falls exclusively within the confines of the First Amendment Establishment Clause. And the answer to that is no, it cannot. If the state of Rhode Island would take the lead on that and take some initiative on that, I sincerely believe it would set a tone for the rest of the country to come under that. And then, the debate on other aspects of abortion, I think, are going to continue on. I know there's very strong arguments on both sides of that. But on the narrow, we're in the Finance Committee, and this is a narrow issue of should the taxpayer dollars go to that. And I would call upon the committee, I'd appeal to your oath under the Constitution to support and pass this measure. And that's basically it.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you for your service, too.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Good. I met you earlier, and I know we have a lot of things in common. Okay, are there any questions from any of the witness, from the panel for the witness? Yes, Rep. Price. Mm-hmm.
Just real quick.
The Ohio ruling, is that in conjunction with any of this, where the Supreme Court ruled on Ohio's ruling, or should we even address that at this point?
Is this dealing with heartbeat bill?
The defunding.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Okay. So there's. I'm part of a litigation team called Facto Attorney Generals. Also.
Okay, it's okay. No, before you get started, I just want to make sure we are staying narrow on if it's related to the bill itself.
Okay.
This bill.
Yeah. I know what he's talking about. There was
Funding.
a decision regarding defunding abortion facilities. The legal basis in that case is a different one.
Okay, thanks.
In the instant case here, I'm part of a litigation team called De Facto Attorney Generals, and we're involved with the federal litigation right now dealing with whether or not the Trump administration can withhold funding to Planned Parenthood through Title X. And we've actually intervened in that case on the side of Planned Parenthood, the plaintiffs, and we're saying that we agree with Planned Parenthood that the guidelines are not clear. But the reason why the federal government can't appropriate federal taxpayer dollars is the same reason why the state of Rhode Island can't, because that appropriation violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. We're reframing this question under the correct controlling constitutional prescription and narrative. And so this is a different approach to it, but it's based on, Rhode Island is part of a constitutional republic. So the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and the state and federal government both must not engage in any kind of action that would violate that. And so we're basically, this bill and the different arguments that we're making and other groups are making in federal district court right now come from First Amendment Establishment Clause jurisprudence.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brett McLaughlin.
Yes. Thank you, sir, for being here tonight testifying. You've enlightened us, on the subject matter. I would ask you, in reference to the First Amendment, 14th Amendment, and the Sixth Amendment, which, we took a pledge to uphold the Constitution. Basically, why is it being violated? Why is Planned Parenthood receiving federal funds at this time?
Well, let me say that it's...
Well, here we go again.
Yes.
I'm making sure we remain very narrow, and I understand your point, Rep. McLaughlin, but asking the witness why he thinks that occurs is not what this particular bill is about. So if you want to talk to him about it, we'll do it what we call a sidebar.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll rephrase my question.
Okay.
In reference to, obviously, this question hasn't been answered. Basically, is the U.S. Congress and the United, States Senate in violation?
Well, let me answer
of our Constitution,
that question, but keep it narrowly tailored to the instant bill right here.
Yes.
Right now, the state of Rhode Island is in direct violation of the United States Constitution. Every year that it gives money to facilities providing Planned Parenthood, facilities providing convenience abortions. Okay. Anytime the federal government gives money to facilities providing convenience abortions, it's violating the United States Constitution because it is entangling the government with the religion of secular humanism. That's not a creative argument. That's what the evidence would show that's taken place. A question you were asking is, why have they been able to do that, or why hasn't it been stopped? What's been the legal basis for doing it? And there's really not been a very solid one. Just like there's a lot of like so-called red states, for example, that every year they say, we're not going to give money to any facility providing convenience abortions because we're not going to do it. And I'm like, that's not a legal basis. You're just doing it because you just feel like you shouldn't. Whereas the other blue states say, we feel like we should. I mean, the problem is that there has been I would say at best tenuous legal basis in the past for why states could, or the federal government or state governments could give money to facilities providing convenience abortions. It would come through Roe versus Wade or Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which they used the 14th Amendment, substantive due process, and equal protection clause as basically the underlying legal basis, saying abortion's a fundamental right. But we would say that that is a bunch of nonsense. Issues like race, those fall within the 14th Amendment, equal protection, and substantive due process clause purview, because race deals with immutability, and substantive due process can only be raised if the matter involves American history and tradition. Abortion has nothing to do with immutability whatsoever, and has absolutely nothing to do with American tradition or history. So the misuse of the 14th Amendment is something that we've been taking very seriously. We're trying to defend and restore the integrity of that. And so I don't know if I'm going too much off topic, but as it stands right now, the state is in violation of the United States Constitution for appropriating funds. They are standing on behalf of taxpayers, like the ones here today from Abundant Life, that would have standing under federal district court to proceed to enjoin the state from making that appropriation. But instead of doing that, the honorable thing to do, respectfully, I would submit, would be for the state to say, yeah, that makes sense. If there's one person in your district who does not think abortion is moral, their taxpayer dollars should not be being used to advance that non-secular procedure. If the mother's life's in danger, if it's a product of rape or incest, those are exceptions. Those are a distinction that's a distinction with a difference, we would submit. And those procedures would be secular, but I'm sorry, I'm going to tangent.
And my last and final question would be under the First and 14th Amendment and the Sixth Amendment, the penalties for violating.
Okay, so that's
the state of Rhode Island, would they be subject to any penalties?
And by the way, so it's the First Amendment Establishment Clause is what this bill is based off of.
Yep.
And then we're saying the 14th Amendment has no jurisdiction over this issue whatsoever, that was always a misuse of the law. I'm also referring to Article 6 of the United States Constitution. It's not the Sixth Amendment, but it's Article 6, which creates the duty,
Yep.
the oath of office, just like you take as an army when you join the military.
Yep.
And the penalties for that right now would be an injunction. So right now, the state could be held accountable in federal district court through, if a taxpayer in this state who didn't believe that abortion, they didn't want their taxpayer dollars being used in that non-secular manner, being appropriated in that way, they could seek relief from the federal district court, the state of Rhode Island, to seek a preliminary and permanent injunction to stop the state from doing that. And then they would probably also be entitled to seek other forms of relief as well if they could show actual damages. But there's no, that would be the prospective penalty. You could ask the courts to enforce make the state obey the Constitution. But instead of doing that, in the instant case here, this is a hearing, and we're asking the state legislature to pull the state to be within to obey the Constitution. And it's not based on my feelings. The Supreme Court has found in Torcaso versus Watkins that secular humanism is a religion for the purpose of the First Amendment Establishment Clause. It is self-evident that when someone says that abortion isn't murder, that it's not immoral, that they cannot prove that. When someone says life does not begin at conception, they can only pound the table. Then they can only make that position based on their feelings. But the courts has made expressly clear, especially in the Holloman case, that emotional appeals, emotional feelings cannot be used to usurp the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. So,
With that said, I want to thank you. And one statement you did make in reference to it takes one person, and I just want to say this, and this is not germane to the subject matter, Chairman. So, with that said, it took one person in the state of Rhode Island to try and get rid of all the crosses on our war memorials, okay? And they filed that in Woonsocket, and you're absolutely right. But they were defeated, okay? My bill defeated them.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, bills do work sometimes.
Yes.
Are there any questions of the
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Rep. Amore and then Rep. Diaz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Rhode Island's clearly not alone in their violation of the various aspects of the Constitution that you've mentioned. Where has this been litigated?
So it's being litigated really right now for the kind of the first time in different federal courts. It's kind of a newer concept. The real question presented is, which constitutional prescription has jurisdiction here? First of all, are there any? That's question one. Should the individual states be able to decide? There's a lot of red states that we deal with that are like, we're going to overturn Roe versus Wade, and the individual states will be able to decide. And we're sitting there going, no. The United States Constitution is not silent. We agree with our friends on the left or the blue or whatever you want to call it, like the Constitution is not silent. We're just saying that the right constitutional prescription isn't the 14th Amendment. That really does not address this question. I mean, we would respectfully submit that the First Amendment Establishment Clause balanced with the Free Exercise Clause fully answers that question. I say again, I'm not for the left or for the right. I'm just for trying to figure out what the Constitution requires. So there could be arguments that would be made that the First Amendment Free Exercise Clause would allow for the right of abortion in every state because you cannot prove that life begins at conception. That's the debate that's going to go on.
So
and
I guess
on.
my question
Sorry.
is, are there cases pending anywhere at this point in time?
It's-
in any
it's-
state or any federal court?
In California, there's one, but there can be a whole lot that would be unleashed in a moment's notice. Right now, there's probably about, I know New York is copying, plagiarizing this legislature, right? The House Bill 5599, they're about to introduce it. There's about 7 states or so that have introduced it. And so normally before you resort to litigation, we feel that it's wise to go to the states to say, here's what the facts, here's what the evidence shows, here's a constitutional controlling legal basis based on controlling Supreme Court precedent, based on what the facts and evidence show for why the state should not be appropriating money in this way.
But you would agree that constitutional questions historically have been settled through the courts?
They can be, and I'm sure no matter what they will be. So if Senator Blackburn from Tennessee and D.C. introduces the federal version of this bill, which is very likely to happen, and it passes, let's say, passes the Senate and somehow passes the House, let's say, and the president signs it, clearly, I'm sure it would be litigated. So no matter what, it's probably going to be litigated. And so, but another thing you raise is
we've had citizens have had standing
they've had standing.
under this argument since 1973.
You're correct. There's the Establishment Clause jurisprudence is unique jurisprudence because it's the only one upon which taxpayers can have taxpayer standing to ask the government to obey the Constitution. And so you're right in that there's a lot of states that are not in compliance with it. We'd also argue that there's a lot of red states, for example, that that are in compliance, but if you ask them why they're doing it, they have no legal basis for it. So, I mean, there's like Tennessee passed a bill saying, we're not going to give any money to facilities providing convenience abortions because we're not going to do it. Louisiana did the same thing. If I worked for Planned Parenthood, I was their lawyer for the ACLU, I would sue the state of Tennessee and say you have no basis for doing it. But, instead, again, the courts are great. The courts are supposed to be a check and balance on the legislative branch, but it's great when the legislatures can get together, doesn't matter which party they're from, and say, this makes sense. Now, let's fight it. We can fight it out over, should we allow abortion up to the fetal heartbeat, or should we allow it up to the time of birth? That's a different kind of fight. But the question presented here is, should taxpayers in your district who are vehemently opposed to this have to have their taxpayer dollars going towards that? That's the question presented.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
You're quite welcome. Rep. Diaz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quick. It's a lot of information to digest today, and it's also confused because one thing is right, another one is not. It's kind of confused for the viewers, if for some of the members here. But my question to you is, will be Rhode Island the first state doing that, or the similar legislation passing other states already?
So there's about 6 states or so that have introduced it. Pennsylvania's about to, New York's about to as well. They're about to introduce the bill. It's been introduced in different states, and there's been some hearings. But this is a newer concept because it's never been framed this way. It's never really been the arguments have never been framed that way. But that's a very good point you're making, and that is, I'm saying my position is that I'm here to testify not based on my feelings or what I think should happen. I'm pointing toward the Supreme Court decision in Torcaso versus Watkins, where the Supreme Court found that secular humanism is a religion, and then we have a litany of other cases decided by the Federal Court of Appeals that would say that, yes, secular humanism is a religion. And then the evidence would show that convenience abortions is non-secular practices, and the government can't endorse those things. The representative mentioned crosses on, in a graveyard, for example. Can the government pay for those? And that would be something that would have to be debated back and forth. There could be there's other ways to justify things, compelling state interests, and whether or not were there other monuments there displaying that were religious. Every case has its own set of facts and circumstances, but in the instant case here, the evidence would show that the First Amendment Establishment Clause was never just designed to prevent the government from endorsing the edicts of institutionalized religions like Christianity, Judaism, Islam. The First Amendment Establishment Clause was designed, if not more so, to stop the government from endorsing the edicts of non-institutionalized religions as well, which convenience abortion practices do fall within.
Okay, so when you was trying to answer my question, you mentioned that, because it's a long answer, that you give it to us.
Lawyers.
But it's good, it's good. You mentioned that a few states already passed the law.
So they've introduced it.
Introduce it. No one passes.
No one
yeah.
that's correct. It has not been signed by a governor yet.
Okay. Because my question was following that part, in case it was passed, if they are in the process to any litigation or anything, but it's not passed, I don't have to ask the question. But thank you. It's a great information that you share with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. If it's a direct question, McLaughlin, because we want to get the witness going. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome.
I don't have to be rushed anyway. If it's on me,
No.
other people might need to go.
No, let me say, it's not that.
Yes, sir.
It's that sometimes one thought will lead to another thought, and as long as it's specifically on the bill that we're talking about, it's okay. But if it's not on the bill that we're talking about, I'm going to overrule it. So that's just so that we don't get into a back and forth on it. It's great. I mean, I've learned a lot by what you've just said, and I think many members on the panel do, and it does cause people to have questions, but they must be on the bill that we're talking about. Okay.
With that said, Chairman, I just wanted to answer a question that this gentleman asked in relation to, has this been tested? You know what I mean?
If he asks you that, and I don't think the witness is supposed to be asking you a particular question. I'm just trying to make sure if it's a general sidebar, it's okay, but if it's not,
it's number one. It is not germane. Pertains.
If it's not germane, then I'm going to rule it has to be on a sidebar, so that we can make sure we stay straight. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions of the witness?
Let's say a closing remark, maybe, to summarize some of it.
If you can summarize it in a brief summary, I would appreciate that, sir.
Yes, sir. Maybe a 2-sentence summary, and that is, thank you so much for your time. And these matters are confusing and they're complex, and I'm talking about court language and so forth. But basically, we've tried to give a legal framework, a constitutional legal basis for why the state should engage in certain action and why it should engage in other action. It doesn't matter what other states are doing. It doesn't matter if it's passed in other states. And things of that nature. The question presented for you guys would be to look through what we've presented and make a determination if you think that, it would comport with your duty pursuant to Article 6 to not appropriate monies in a way that prospectively violates a provision of the United States Constitution, in step with your oath of office. That's it.
And thank you very much. And again, I absolutely have learned a lot from your testimony, and I do agree that it's a topic that we're all learning a lot about, and it poses a lot of questions, and it causes good conversation.
Just
Reverend
one
McLaughlin.
pertaining to the
Okay,
subject
good.
matter. One more question, and I'll leave you. Is the state of Rhode Island currently, for funding abortions?
It currently is appropriating money at this time to facilities providing convenience abortions. At this
Really?
time. Yes, sir.
Do you know that amount?
I've heard different estimates. Maybe Representative Price knows that answer better than I do.
Representative Price.
Well, wait. See, here we go.
Sorry. Do you need me to answer the
Questions.
question?
Well, wait. No, questions come from the chair.
Oh, I'm
They don't
sorry.
that's okay.
I'm out of
That's
line,
okay.
Chairman.
Yeah, we're just making sure that we stay tight. Why don't you and Representative Price have a sidebar, or you and the gentleman here have a sidebar? Because it's important questions, and you need your answers, but we've got to stay focused on what we're doing.
So it's thousands of dollars, at least over $50,000. I can say that whether or not, if it's $100,000 or if it's millions of dollars like California does or something else, if it's $1, it would be a violation. The state cannot engage in direct or symbolic action that would endorse one religion, create the perception that it's putting religion over non-religion. In the instant case here, the state of Rhode Island is appropriating money in that manner in excess of $50,000.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Yes, sir.
And I do. And thank you for your service, too.
Yes, sir.
I really appreciate
Yes, sir.
that.
Thank you guys for y'all's.
Thank you. Now, there were a number of people that signed up on their witness sheets, but you put no in terms of testifying, so I'm assuming that that's the last person who's actually testifying on the bill. Rep. Quattrochi, please.
I was just wondering if he submitted written testimony or that we can refer to some of these cases that he cited for our future reference.
Okay, that's a great point. Two parts to that, though. If you have written testimony that was referring to cases that he had, we'd appreciate your letting us know what that is. And if you said it during your testimony, we've got a tape that we can figure that, because that is important
Yes,
to
sir.
have that information.
So there's a talking point sheet that was passed around, and that could constitute written testimony. On that sheet, I only referenced Torcaso versus Watkins. There's a list of other federal court of appeals that have found that secular humanism is a religion for the purpose of the First Amendment Establishment Clause. I did not put those on that list, but I'd be glad to get that list of cases. I will say also that that the Ninth Circuit and the D.C. Circuit have ruled that secular humanism is not a religion. But the Ninth Circuit also ruled contemporaneously that the Supreme Court, outranks them, and the Supreme Court's already recognized it. So that's why I only put the Supreme Court case. But I do think it's helpful to know the full weight of the authority. So that would constitute the written. I'm going to submit this, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
I think, yes, you may. And I think a good thing to do, if you would double back with Rep. Price in terms of providing him with those cases, then you can get them to all of us so that we can read them. And that way the information will be out.
Mr. Chairman, I would like a copy of that also. All right.
Well, he's going to give it to the clerk, and the clerk will make a copy for each of us, and we'll all have that.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman?
You absolutely, yes, sir.
Yes, Chairman. With all due respect, we have some.
Gracias and welcome.
Empiece, dile que diga su nombre y su posición y entonces tú lo traduces.
Buenas noches.
Buenas
Good
noches.
Soy el reverendo Santos Escobar,
I'm Reverend Santos Escobar.
pastor de la Iglesia Vida Abundante United Methodist Church.
I am the pastor of United Methodist Church, Abundant Life.
Un saludo especial para todos.
Special greeting for each one of you.
Estoy aquí porque soy un ciudadano de esta nación,
I'm here because I'm a citizen of this nation.
una persona que llegó hace 16 años a este país.
I came 16 years ago to this country.
Llegué con mi esposa y 4 hijos.
I came with my wife and 4 children.
Ellos estaban entre los 13 y 18 años.
They were between 13 and 18 years old.
Todos somos ciudadanos de este país
We are all citizens of this country.
y 9 miembros de mi familia votamos en las elecciones.
And 9 members of my family can vote in the elections.
9 miembros de mi familia trabajamos duro,
We all work hard,
pagando nuestros impuestos,
paying our taxes,
contribuyendo al bienestar de esta nación.
contributing to the well-being of the nation.
Estoy acá porque, bueno, al ver mi camisa, ustedes saben,
I'm here, and as you can see the color of my shirt, you know why I'm here.
cuál es mi punto de vista en relación al aborto.
You know what my point of view in relates to the abortion is.
Solamente estoy de acuerdo cuando la madre está en un gran peligro de vida o muerte.
I only agree when the mother is in great danger. Her life is in great danger.
De otra manera,
Otherwise,
no soporto el aborto
I do not support
bajo ninguna
abortion
circunstancia.
under any other circumstance.
Mayormente cuando tiene relación a un negocio lucrativo de alguna organización.
Especially when it has to do with something lucrative from any institution.
Como una persona responsable en esta nación,
As a responsible person in this country,
les hablé de que mi familia todos contribuimos a pagar nuestros impuestos y también al bienestar de esta nación.
I spoke how my family works hard and they pay their taxes and contribute to the well-being of the nation.
Pastoreo una iglesia que he enseñado
At my church, I teach
a respetar las
to
leyes,
respect the laws,
a trabajar duro,
to work hard,
a pagar sus
to pay
impuestos
their taxes,
y a portarnos bien
and to be good.
en esta nación que nos ha abierto sus brazos.
That has opened its arms to us.
Pero no puedo estar de acuerdo
But I cannot agree
que mis
that
impuestos,
the money that I pay in
mis
taxes,
contribuciones
my contributions
para el bienestar de esta
to the
nación
well-being of the nation
se usen para
are being
hacer
used
abortos.
to do abortions. to
Así
practice
que
abortion.
ese es mi testimonio en
So
esta
that
noche.
is my testimony tonight.
No deseo contribuir a esta nación para que parte de mis impuestos se utilicen en abortos.
I do not desire to contribute through my taxes for this type of practices.
Así que yo estoy de acuerdo
So I agree
que a una organización que procura hacer este tipo de cosas no se le dé dinero.
that money should not be given to an
Mayormente-
organization that is doing this type of practices,
Mayormente de nuestros impuestos.
especially being that is from our money.
Aquí se ha hablado si es legal dar dinero o no es legal.
We have listened today about if it is legal or not legal to do this practice.
Arde mi corazón de tristeza
But in my heart, there's a great sadness.
que muchas veces cuando no podemos solucionar los problemas
To
de
know
esta
that
nación,
many times that we cannot find a solution for the problems in the nation,
de nuestras ciudades o de nuestro
in
estado,
our cities or our states,
mejor aprobemos leyes para aprobar aquellas cosas que no están correctas.
that we shouldn't be working on approving laws for things that are not right.
Pongo algún ejemplo.
For example,
La prostitución
prostitution.
ha sido ilegal
It has been illegal
en nuestro estado,
in our state,
pero es un problema que lo vemos
but
todos
it's a
los
major
días.
problem that we see every day.
Yo vivo en la Cranston Street.
I live in Cranston Street.
La Cranston Street está llena de prostitutas.
Cranston Street is filled with prostitutes.
Pero en vez de solucionar el problema,
But instead of finding a solution for that problem,
queremos aprobar leyes
people are pushing to approve
que autoricen esa
laws that
práctica.
authorize this practice,
Eso no es correcto.
which is not right.
No hemos podido lidiar con la situación de la marihuana.
We haven't been able to find a solution for the problems of drugs.
No hemos podido sacar las drogas de las
We
calles.
haven't been able to take drugs out of streets.
Pues ahora que estamos aprobando leyes
So now they are approving laws
que
to
legalicen el problema
legalize that,
para salir de la situación.
to come out of situation.
Mis estimados legisladores,
So I just want to ask you,
Debemos de procurar el bienestar de nuestras comunidades.
to please help us to find the well-being of our communities.
Nuestras comunidades no van a estar bien
Our communities are not going to be well
cuando legalizamos aquello que les
when we
destruye.
are legalizing things that are destructive.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure how much English you're going to understand. My Spanish is terrible, but thank you for your comments.
Muchas gracias por sus comentarios.
They help us to understand the problems that you face, and we are very concerned about that. Tonight, we were talking about one bill that was specific, but we will do our best to make sure as we think about these things, we will think about what you said to us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just one second. Truly, Rep. McLaughlin, I know you want to make a comment, and that's not bad, but truly, this is the last question that we're going to have. Okay. Your mic, please.
That would be appropriate, Chairman. I just would like to thank you, Reverend. Muchas gracias
Thank you, sir.
for sharing. My last question would be, as an American citizen who pays taxes, do you want your tax dollar money to fund, Planned Parenthood?
Nunca.
No, never.
Never.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Obrigado.
Okay.
That's Portuguese. Gracias. I'm sorry. What country are you from?
El Salvador.
El Salvador.
Okay, thank you very
Muchas
much for your
gracias.
testimony. Okay,
Great.
that was, and I think from the witness sheet, was there anyone that I missed?